What is a Maledictus in Harry Potter, and which characters are Maledictus? Hi guys, it's Eve. Welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I'm going to go through something that we know exists in the Harry Potter world, but not loads about it is explained, and I'm going to help to explain it, and that is Maledictus, which is a curse. It's a curse that affects at least one character in the Harry Potter world, but potentially more, and I'm going to go through this. I'm going to explain to you what it is, who is affected by it, and how it differs from things such as being an animagus and werewolf. So without further ado, I'm going to get straight into it, but before I do, if you're new here, then hi, I'm Eve. I talk about all things fantasy, TV, book and film. I do talk a lot about Harry Potter, but I do also do videos on Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Last of Us, a real wide range. So if you like that sort of thing, then you're in the right place. So make sure that you're subscribed and have notifications on so you don't miss future videos. I'd love to have you as part of the YouTube family. I'm going to get straight into it and tell you exactly what a Maledictus is. Firstly, a Maledictus is a blood curse. It's a curse that impacts someone and it completely changes their life. But this is a blood curse. So rather than this being a curse that another witch or wizard might put onto another witch or wizard, it's genetic. It's a genetic condition. So there's not really any avoiding it or making it happen. It just is a genetic issue. A Maledictus isn't something that is caught, it's not like contagious or inflicted. It's inherited only through the female line. The mothers will pass it on to their daughters. So a Maledictus blood curse can only be had and experienced by a female. And what this blood curse causes to happen is the person who has it will turn into a beast, into an animal. But this curse gets worse over time. So at the start, during the female sort of early years, when they're younger, at first, the Maledictus curse will almost present like being an animagus, in the sense of they can turn back and forth into an animal at will. When they transform into the animal, they keep their human sort of mind, they keep their sense about them, their wits about them, but they're an animal. So it very much presents like an animagus during sort of earlier on at the start of the condition. Then over time, this transformation becomes harder to control, where they might find that they are turning into an animal without willing it to, without wanting it to happen. They find themselves turning. They might find themselves finding it hard to turn back into a human. Maybe they did willingly turn into their animal form, but then struggle and it's harder than usual to get back into human form. They might find they sense their mind is starting to slip a bit when they're in their animal form. They don't feel like they have fully got their mind about them and their wits about them. It basically becomes much harder to control and harder to make that transformation, and especially that transformation back into human. They might find that this transformation is happening more frequently, involuntarily, and that actually because it's harder to turn back into human form, they're in that animal form for longer than they'd want to be and longer than they're meant to be. Then eventually the real sort of tragic nature of this curse and why it is a curse is because eventually the curse will take over completely and they won't be able to transform back into their human form at all. There will come a point when they turn into an animal for the last time and stay as that animal, and they can't transform back into a human. So they are now permanently an animal. But not only that, it's not that now they're an animal and still have their human mind, but they also, that their mind becomes more animalistic. They sort of lose everything that made them human. They lose their memories, their human thoughts, until they eventually are entirely that animal. Obviously, we don't know the full extent to that. If they do maybe always keep an element of their human mind, maybe people who are Maledictus and are now permanently an animal do have slightly higher intelligence than other animals, are slightly more aware, do have some of those memories. We obviously can never know, because once they're in that animal form permanently, they don't turn back to humans to be able to communicate to us and tell us what it's like. So we'll never know that, but we know that their mind does turn more animalistic, but we don't know how far that goes. So in a nutshell, a Maledictus is a blood curse that's inherited through the female line. It's not inflicted or caught. It's a genetic condition that means that you can turn back and forth into an animal and human, but over time this becomes harder and harder to control until you're turning more frequently and involuntarily, until eventually you cannot turn back into your human form and you are an animal forever, and that's in everything, body and mind. It's a really tragic condition and it's really sad, and it's that eventual, people don't know exactly when that permanent change will happen, just know it will happen at some point, probably in their 20s or 30s, but they don't know exactly when. So it is a little bit of a waiting game. So it's very, very sad. Also, I noticed as well with turning back and forth into an animal, it is one specific animal. So it's not that they can turn back and forth into any animal. It'll always be that same animal that one person with the curse transforms back and forth into. It'll be different between people. So someone might transform into a cat, someone else into a snake. Each person will have one animal that is what they transform into. So firstly, before I go into who is a Maledictus, I just want to talk about how a Maledictus differentiates from some other, I guess, abilities and curses and conditions in Harry Potter. Werewolf, that is lycanthropy. So this isn't genetic. So Maledictus is a genetic condition, whereas lycanthropy, so being a werewolf, isn't. It can be known in the wizarding world as like a disease, because obviously there's people that don't want to be werewolves, like Lupin. For some people, they want to be, and that's like their superpower. But it is something that's inflicted. It's still tragic in the sense that people might not have a choice in it. For example, Lupin didn't have a choice in becoming a werewolf, but was. But yeah, it's something that's inflicted. Other werewolves will pass it on. It's basically through the mixing of like blood and saliva. So when a werewolf bites someone, passes on that lycanthropy disease. So that is it's almost like it is contagious, that, because it's passed on. It's not genetic. It's not something you sort of usually would choose to happen. It's something that's passed on and inflicted. So with Maledictus, obviously that goes from being voluntary transformation until it becomes involuntary anymore and then permanent. Werewolf, it is sort of involuntary, but it's only when the full moon is out. So it's only at very specific times. It has that overlap with Maledictus, that Maledictus eventually becomes an involuntary transformation. Lycanthropy can also be that, because if the full moon's out and you're out in the full moon, you've not had your potion, then you will transform whether you like it or not. So it has got the similar element there to Maledictus as being involuntary, but it's never permanent. You won't permanently stay as that werewolf. You'll turn back. Once the full moon goes, you'll be back in your human form. It's never permanent. And that if you don't take a proper potion, you might lose your human mind and be that werewolf, that animal, sort of have those animal thoughts when you're a werewolf, as what happens with Lupin in Prisoner of Azkaban. But there are ways to control it. For example, Lupin also, when he remembers, will have a potion that means he keeps his mind so that he won't be full-blown werewolf. He'll look like a werewolf, but he'll have his mind so he can control himself. It's much more controllable. Being a werewolf is still very tragic and mostly not people's choices, because it's usually that they've been like attacked by a werewolf, but they'll live majority of their lives as humans. It'll just be that once a month where they turn into a werewolf, and it's more easily controlled and managed. Then animagus. So animagus, as I said, Maledictus presents very much like an animagus at the start. Like as the person who has that curse is sort of growing up in their early years, it will just be like they're an animagus, because they can turn back and forth into an animal at will, which is what animagus is. You can just go between the two. You can choose, right, I'm going to be a cat now I'm going to go back to my human form. Now back to cat, back to human. You can completely choose, and it will never get to the point where you cannot turn back. You might choose to stay as that animal forever or for a long time, as Peter Pettigrew and Sirius do, but it's completely your choice. And when you're in that animal form, you always keep your human mind. You don't think like an animal, you always think like a human. And with animagus, that is something you very much choose to be. You choose to be an animagus. There's a spell, a sort of ritual you have to do in Harry Potter to become an animagus. It's extremely difficult to get right. It's not a genetic condition, it's not inflicted, it's not contagious, it's not caught. It is purely something you have to actively decide to make happen to yourself and to choose to become and to have that ability. It is an ability that you choose. Never forget how to turn back. You'll always be able to have that transformation back and forth. A Maledictus will eventually have no choice. They'll have no choice but to change. They also have no choice in it happening to them. If they're born with the curse, that's it. They have that. They will always have that ability and then eventually stay as an animal. So who's a Maledictus? Who do we know that is a Maledictus? So the one known confirmed Maledictus is Nagini. In Fantastic Beasts, we meet Nagini, and she's a woman. She's not a snake, she is a woman, a human, and she appears, in Fantastic Beasts, it appears like she is just an animagus, because she's turning back and forth from a snake into a human at will to fight. She uses it to her advantage as a superpower, as a weapon. She can transform back and forth into a snake, but it's not that she's an animagus. The reason she can transform is because she has this Maledictus blood curse. She was born with it, she inherited it from her mother, or from the female line. It might be, maybe it was her grandma was a Maledictus, but this blood curse had been carried down and it clearly presented dominant in her, which meant that she currently appears as an animagus because she can transform back and forth, but actually she has this blood curse, so she will eventually not be able to transform back into a human. She will stay as a snake. And we know this happens because we see her in Fantastic Beasts where she's still going back and forth between human and snake, but we know this is Nagini. And what do we know about Nagini later on in the modern day Harry Potter? That she is now permanently a snake. She cannot turn back into a human, and she shows no signs of having human thoughts. She is definitely clever. You can tell she has these heightened senses, that she's very aware, that, you know, the way she follows and sort of supports Voldemort, she's a very clever snake. So that does sort of suggest that Maledictus, when they are permanently an animal, animal, they do keep an element of maybe that human intelligence. But Nagini was a woman, was a human woman, always had this ability to go back and forth into a snake, but then eventually couldn't transform back into a human and remained as a snake. At some point between her permanently changing into a snake and one day Harry Potter, she meets Voldemort and ends up supporting him. But we don't know exactly when she lost the ability to transform back into a human, but we know it was sometime between the 1920s and 1990s. And then in that time, she also then found Voldemort. Someone who has that blood curse is probably going to be a bit bitter and a bit angry at the world because you've had this on you, have no choice, and you're now permanently an animal. And so it is thought there is very much the chance, even though Nagini doesn't seem like evil when she's a female, when she's a human, it is thought that, you know, maybe when she's into a snake, like she found Voldemort and connected with him. He's also someone that can speak parcel tongue, so inevitably, like if she's been going round with this slight element of human in her mind, even if she's like majority animal now, she probably does have that part of her that misses like connection. She might now be able to maybe communicate with animals because she's an animal, but if she has that even slight human element, she probably misses that higher level of connection. It's likely she probably went to Albania, that she went to the Forest of Albania, found that as a place she could hide or she could live, and she found Voldemort or Voldemort found her, and this was someone that could communicate with her because he could speak parcel tongue, he could talk to her, and she could have that higher level of connection and communication, not just talking to animals but not being able to talk to humans, but Voldemort was that connection that she could have. As horrible it seems, like, oh, she's there helping Voldemort in all his evil plans, like you can sort of understand her when you think of her story and how tragic her story is in her life. Like she then finds someone who she can talk to and she doesn't have a full human mind with her. To her, that is the best option. So you do sort of understand that. Or there is very much the chance that Voldemort may have found her and sort of manipulated her to get her to follow him. We know that period of time where he was possessing animals, that he might have used her. So it's not necessarily the case that Nagini did just choose to follow Voldemort. It might have been sort of the other way around and she didn't really have much choice in it. It does feel like the fact, like Voldemort's snake is a Maledictus, like why a Maledictus? Why not just it could be any snake, which does think that there probably is something more to Maledictus when they turn into animals permanently. They do have this higher intelligence, this high level of understanding, higher power, potentially strength, and that would be why Voldemort has specifically chosen Nagini. And then, yeah, would mean that maybe Nagini was sort of a little bit aware of what was going on. And then obviously, like, you know, it's really sad then as well, though, that Voldemort then turns her into a Horcrux. Potentially, actually, the reason why he has a Maledictus as a companion is because he wants to turn her into a Horcrux, and maybe only an animal like that, like a Maledictus, could be turned into a Horcrux. Maybe there's more uncertainty or issues that could be incurred if you just take it like a normal animal, an animal that has always just been an animal, into a Horcrux. Maybe it's slightly less easier to control and it's a bit more uncertain, whereas an animal that used to be a human and has this high level of intelligence and maybe is easier to communicate with, it's a bit more predictable and creates a stronger Horcrux. It's really sad. Nagini's story is really sad, and it's crazy, like when you watch Harry Potter and you see Nagini, you don't realise at first, especially before Fantastic Beasts were out, you don't realise the backstory of Nagini. And something else I find really actually interesting is the fact that in Fantastic Beasts she becomes close friends with Credence Barebone. They sort of connect. They both have these really sad, destructive curses on them. Nagini is a Maledictus and she knows at this time that her time is sort of running out and that soon she will be an animal forever. Credence is an Obscurial. He can't really control it. It's doing all these things but not really meaning to. There's all this stuff happening. They both have these conditions, these magical sort of curses and things going on that they don't really want and they can't really control. And they both have these sort of fates that are basically set for them and they can't really do much about. And so it really makes sense that they would become friends and connect because they would understand each other. So whilst Nagini is the only confirmed Maledictus, there are two other characters that there are theories that they could be Maledictus. Firstly, we have Crookshanks. So I did a whole separate video going through some theories about Crookshanks. I'll link it up here. I did make a mistake and I called her a Metamorphagus and I did mean Maledictus. I just got the words wrong. There's a theory that Crookshanks is a Maledictus, and the reason why and where this theory has come from is that if Maledictus do have this like high level of intelligence and keep even like a slither of their human memories and thoughts, that this would then explain, Crookshanks being a Maledictus would explain the way she acts with Sirius and Peter Pettigrew. Crookshanks immediately shows this hatred towards Peter Pettigrew, towards Scabbers. Before we know what's going on, Crookshanks has this vendetta against Scabbers, but seems to love Sirius. So Harry looks out on the grounds one night before he knows the dog is Sirius and sees Crookshanks leading a big dog who we then find out is Sirius, to the Whomping Willow. And he's like, what? That's so weird. Then in the Shrieking Shack, when there's a sort of confrontation and Harry has his wand pointed at Sirius, Crookshanks sits on Sirius's lap over Sirius's heart, protects him. Could be just put down to, it's been confirmed that she's a highly intelligent cat. She's a magical cat. She's more than just your usual cat. So it could just be she's got this heightened sort of sense and ability, and she just understands, she sees that who Scabbers and the dog really are, and she sees that Scabbers and Pettigrew is someone who is lying and who is guilty, and that Sirius is someone who has been wrongfully convicted and is innocent. So it could just be a matter of that, just sensing who these people really are. Or, and this is the common and like sort of popular theory, it does feel like Crookshanks has this level of understanding and recognition of these characters, like she knows them. And so it's wondered whether Crookshanks is a Maledictus, and either that when she was a human, when she was a witch, that she knew James, Lily, Sirius, Pettigrew, was in that circle, maybe was in the order, was in the first order, and knew them all, so she knew and was close to them, so she knew Sirius and Pettigrew and knew the truth of what happened, and that is why she recognises them and why she has this hatred towards Pettigrew and this love towards Sirius. Or, even if she was a human before and was already a Maledictus by that point, if that potentially was Lily and James's pet. So we know that Lily and James and Harry had a cat, and there's a portrait where this cat very much looks like Crookshanks. So potentially Crookshanks was a human with Maledictus curse, turned permanently into a cat, and sort of decided to try and find a family to be taken in by. And they found Lily and James. And because it's a cat but it's a Maledictus, they have this heightened intelligence, heightened ability, heightened awareness, understood what was going on, and even though they were now a cat permanently with a sort of mainly cat's mind, they still saw how close James and Lily were to Sirius and Pettigrew, and how Pettigrew betrayed them, saw the truth of what happened, saw that Pettigrew betrayed James and Lily, and that Sirius was like their best friend, loved them and didn't do anything wrong. So this would explain that recognition and understanding. Or even if it was a human before, knew James and Lily and was like, look, they had this discussion, and Crookshanks as a human went to Lily and James and went, look, I know this curse is about to completely take over, my time's running out, I'm going to be a cat permanently, will you take me in? Can I live with you, basically? Can you protect me, look after me, and I'll do the same for you. I'll try and protect you and look after you in whatever way I can. And so James and Lily took in Crookshanks, like knowing that it's a Maledictus, and it was someone who was their friend before. Then the same reasoning that I just mentioned stands of, it was then someone that lived with Lily and James, loved them, cared for them, was part of their family, and saw everything that went on with Pettigrew and Sirius. So it would explain that extra level of understanding. Then the other character where there is a theory that they might be a Maledictus is Mrs. Norris. Filch doesn't like anyone or anything other than Mrs. Norris. And there is a theory of, is Mrs. Norris actually Mrs. Filch? Is it that Filch was married, or at least had a partner, like was in love, and that partner, his wife or his companion, had this Maledictus blood curse, and so she eventually turned permanently into a cat, but he obviously loves her and so still looks after her and cares for her because it was his wife, it was his partner. She had no choice in what was happening. She was turning back and forth into an animal. They knew it was going to be permanent eventually, so they were together when she was a human, but now that she's permanently a cat, he looks after her. It would explain his behaviour and his hatred even more, in the sense of he would feel so hard done by that. He is born into a wizard family but with no powers. He's a squib, like, oh my gosh, that's very annoying. And then he finds someone, he loves someone who is cursed, and he's going to eventually lose because she's going to eventually be a cat forever. So it would explain his behaviour, his bitterness, his hatred even more. And then why, though, that behaviour is so different with Mrs. Norris. Why does he love Mrs. Norris so much and care for her so much? His sadness, his grief when he thinks that she's been killed in Chamber of Secrets, and then even then after, when he then knows, okay, she could come back, she's just petrified, he's still like lost without her. Obviously, yes, you can just get like this with a pet. Pets are amazing, you can love them and miss them and everything. It could just be that he just connects more with animals and with Mrs. Norris than he does with humans, but it does feel like it's just such a stark difference, and he cares for her so much. Even just in the Yule Ball when he dances with the cat, it's like, oh, is it because this cat is his wife, was his partner, and he sort of lost her but not fully lost her. She turned permanently into a cat, can't change back, but he now looks after her. I actually like this theory, and it would give so much more backstory to Filch as well and explain so much more about him. I think this is a very strong theory. But the only confirmed Maledictus is Nagini. That is everything you need to know about Maledictus. What a Maledictus curse is, who it affects, which characters in the world are are Maledictus and yeah, what it means to be a Maledictus and how it differs from some other magical conditions. I hope you found this useful and now understand what a Maledictus is. If there's still anything you don't understand or have any questions, please don't hesitate to pop them in the comments and I'll go through and answer any that I can. If there are any other things you'd like me to explain, go through, explore, also let me know and I can do a video on it. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, I'd be so grateful if you'd smash a big thumbs up. It means the absolute world to me. And make sure that you're subscribed and have notifications on, because there'll be loads more videos like this explaining different things in the Harry Potter world, doing a history of wizarding families. There'll also be similar content on Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, all that stuff. So you'll do like Harry Potter news videos and updates on what's going on. For example, I've recently done a video going through all the Harry Potter casting news for the HBO series. I'll link the video up top, goes through who we know for certain is going to be in the Harry Potter series, and whenever we find out new news, I'm straight on here to let you know. If you don't want to miss that, then make sure you hit that subscription button and the notification bell. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed it and I'll catch you in the next one.